Hey everyone! I love D&D and 5th edition is my favorite edition so far, but that doesn't mean it's perfect, and I think we all agree a couple adjustments could make things even better. So I've done a series of those adjustments I'm going to be providing to anyone who wants them. You will find links in the video descriptions of each video I do. They are free to use, free to download, free to share. In these videos I'm going to be explaining what adjustments I made, why I made them, and today I'm going to go through my changes to the fighter. Now, with the fighter, I think actually a fighter pretty much does what it's supposed to do. I mean, there's not a lot of flavor in the idea of a fighter. It needs to be able to fight. I mean, it's called the fighter. And in terms of balance, I think actually a fighter works pretty well at most of the levels that see most play. When we start at first level, a fighter does just fine. When we get to 5th level, I think a fighter is still doing just fine. The first time I notice when fighters start to fall behind is approaching the end of the single-digit levels. Once you get to level 8, 9, 10, that's when I start to notice a gap between spellcasters and non-spellcasters. And this is where I really start to see fighters, and barbarians, and rogues start to fall behind. Because, for example, if we look at the Player's Handbook fighter, when they get to level 9, and then when a spellcaster gets to level 9, well, the spellcaster is now accessing 5th level spells. That's a huge power jump. Well, the fighter is getting one reroll of a saving throw. So just the gifts that the spellcasters are getting at these big levels get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the fighter is actually potentially getting smaller gifts than they got at earlier levels. I mean, because even with all the ability score increases a fighter gets, originally, of course, you're going to take some of those feats that you really thought looked great and you're going to get your primary ability score to 20. But once you do that, then you're going to start taking those feats that you thought, they're all right. Or maybe you're going to increase another ability score that's not your primary ability score. And it just gives you a smaller boost than you were getting at lower levels. So when I approached the fighter, what I figured is the fighter really doesn't need much change at those mid and lower levels. But once we get into those higher levels, those levels that see less play, they really could use a boost. Now the subclasses for fighter, I think overall, are pretty good in the Player's Handbook. You have the Champion, the Eldritch Knight, and the Battlemaster. Now the Champion, I don't think is a particularly interesting subclass. They don't get any, interesting new abilities or anything. Instead, what they tend to get are just kind of flat boosts. Boosts to critical range and other fighting style. But for a new player, I think a champion serves a reasonable purpose because it does provide bonuses that are still substantial without being complex. Now the Eldritch Knight, I think, is already pretty good as well. I mean, adding spells to the ability to fight is a good mix, and even their special abilities, their Weapon Bond, War Magic, Eldritch Strike, I thought they all had a reasonable amount of flavor and worked reasonably well. The Battlemaster, I think, is probably the most creative of the fighter subclasses and probably my personal favorite of them, just because maneuvers and superiority dice are completely unique in the rules, and they give the Battlemaster a flavor that is unique. And if you've watched this series, you know I like unique flavor. The only thing I really have against the Battlemaster is that some of the maneuvers don't match up to other ones. So I did want to take some of the maneuvers that I thought didn't work as well as they should and boost them up a bit. So let's take a look at the fighter. We're going to take a look at the base class. We're going to take a look at all 3 subclasses in the Player's Handbook. So let's get started. So here is the fighter, the Treant Monk variant. I've included the class chart so you can find your features a little more quickly. And we get into our class features. And first thing is, the class features haven't changed. We're going to stay at D10 hit points. The proficiencies are going to remain the same as they were in the Player's Handbook, including saving throws and skills. And your starting equipment is going to stay the same. In addition, as we get into fighting style, we have the same fighting styles and they work the same way. I thought they are all okay. I do think some of the fighting styles are better than others. I think archery, for example, is probably better than protection. But I don't think the gap is that huge that it required anything to be changed. Finally, at first level, we're getting our second wind ability, and this is going to remain the same at first level, where you can use a bonus action to regain 1d10 plus your fighter level in hit points. But what I have done with Second Wind is I find that Second Wind is one of those things that's pretty good at first level, and it's pretty good at low levels, but then once we get into higher levels it becomes less and less effective, just because one per fighter level isn't very much. So I am scaling this now. So at first level, it's going to remain the same as it is in the player's handbook. But when you get to level 5, it's going to change to 2d10 plus your fighter level. And then it's going to become 3d10 plus your fighter level at level 11 and 4d10 plus your fighter level at 17. Now that's still not a huge amount of hit points that you're regaining, but it will stay a little more relevant than it did in the player's handbook. At second level, we get to Action Surge, which has always been a great ability and it remains a great ability. I don't see the point in changing that at all. Then at third level, you're going to pick your martial archetype, and then we will get ability score improvements. And just like with the player's handbook, we're going to get them more often. So you get them at 4th, 6th, 8th, 12th, 14th, 16th, and 19th level. And at 5th level, we're going to get our extra attack, just like in the player's handbook. So very little changes for fighters from level 1 to 4, really nothing changes. At level 5, their second wind is slightly better. But other than that, we're not going to see many changes until we get to 8th level. And again, this is because I think fighters work reasonably well in those low levels, and I think they're well balanced in those low levels. It's only in the higher levels where I think they need a boost. So we're going to start boosting them when we get to 8th level. And the first one we're going to do that with is at 8th level. In addition to our ability score increase, we're going to add another ability. I call it Resolute. Beginning at 8th level, when you take the dodge action, you may make a single weapon attack as part of that action. So this isn't a huge power boost for a fighter, but it does give you more options. If you want to fight defensively now, you can use the dodge action and you can still do some offense in addition to that. Then at 9th level, we get to Indomitable, which is similar to the player's handbook, but I have modified it a little bit. Beginning at 9th level, you can re-roll a saving throw that you fail. If you do so, you must use the new roll, and you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. And this is what I've added. When you use this feature to re-roll a saving throw for which you are not proficient, add your proficiency modifier to the result of the new roll. You can use this feature twice between long rests, starting at 13th level, 3 times between long rests starting at 17th level. That's the same as the player's handbook. So the only change is if you re-roll a saving throw for which you are not proficient, you will get to add your proficiency bonus to the re-roll. And I've just noticed this myself in gameplay, is that you'll have the fighter, they'll fail a saving throw, they have Indomitable, but their chance of succeeding on that saving throw was so low in the first place that it seems like a waste to even bother trying to re-roll that saving throw. So they're making something like a wisdom saving throw, and maybe they have a 0 or +1 to that saving throw, and then they're hitting a DC of 17 or 18. Is it even worth trying Indomitable, or do you need to save it? But if you can add your proficiency bonus, now suddenly you have a reasonable chance on that re-roll. So that's why I've made that change. Then when we get to 12th level, again, we're adding another new ability. This one is called Reactionary. Beginning at 12th level, when you use your reaction to make an opportunity attack against a creature that you can see that moves out of your reach, you may attempt a grapple or shove against that creature in place of the weapon attack. So we imagine our fighters usually on the front line. Obviously, there's archery fighters as well, and they tend not to take attacks of opportunity. But when we have our fighter who's up on the front line and fighting the enemies, one of the most frustrating things is your inability to control the battlefield. Enemies can just walk right by you, and maybe you get a weapon attack against them. But with reactionary, now we can control things a little bit more. So when you take your opportunity attack, you could try to grapple the creature, or you could try to push them. If you shove them, you could knock them prone. If they're prone, then they have to get up, and they're going to lose half their movement. Of course, remember, if you want to use the grapple option here, you will need to be able to have a free hand to do it with. So we're just giving the fighter a few more options when they take an attack of opportunity. Some fighters will still want to probably do that weapon attack. It will really depend on your fighter and the situation you're facing. But what this does do is it just gives the fighter more of that combat veteran feel when you are up in the front lines. At 14th level, we're going to give the fighter something unique. Fighting styles are not unique to the fighter. Paladins get fighting styles, Rangers get fighting styles, even some of the subclasses like Swordsbards get fighting styles, but the fighter at 14th level is going to get an improved combat style. So beginning at 14th level, you've mastered your combat style to an unparalleled degree. The bonuses of your combat style improves. If you have more than one fighting style, choose one to improve. So if you have the archery combat style, it would normally give you a +2 bonus you make with ranged attacks. Now, if you begin your turn within 5 feet of an enemy, your movement on your turn does not provoke attacks of opportunity from that enemy. So you're going to gain a little bit more maneuverability with archery. I didn't want to boost the offense of archery at all, because the offense of archery is already really good. And so it really doesn't need a boost. So what I decided to do is improve their maneuverability a bit, so that we're still improving the combat style, but we're not adding on to something that's already really powerful. The next one is defense, and this one's pretty easy. When you're wearing armor, now you gain a +2 bonus to AC instead of +1 bonus, so basically the bonus is doubled. Then we get to dueling. When you're wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +4 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. So again, we're just doubling our bonus there. Again, I don't see this being a problem. Dueling is usually something we do when we're using a weapon and a shield. These kinds of characters tend to do a lot less damage to begin with. What we're really talking about is an additional +2 bonus to damage. Isn't going to unbalance anything. Now, great weapon fighting, the way it normally works is when you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die, you can re-roll it, and then you have to take whatever you roll in place of that. So what we've done is we've changed it now. So when you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for an attack you make with a melee weapon that you are holding with 2 hands, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. If the roll is 1 or 2, you treat the die as rolling its maximum possible result. So we're just boosting great weapon fighting a little bit more. It's hard to double great weapon fighting like we did with dueling or defense, so I think this accomplishes a similar result. Then we get to protection. When a creature you can see attacks a target other than you that is within 5 feet of you, you impose disadvantage on the attack roll. You must be wearing a shield. So we've boosted protection probably more than any of the other fighting styles, because I think that protection is probably the weakest of the fighting styles. So what I've done here is I've just removed the reaction you require to use your protection ability. So now if people gather around you, you're protecting all of them, and you're not limited by that single reaction that you normally have. And then finally, 2-weapon fighting. When you engage in 2-weapon fighting, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of any bonus action attacks. That's the same as the initial combat style. You gain a +1 bonus to AC when holding a weapon in each hand. Now you could potentially take dual wielder as a feat, and then you would get a +1 bonus to AC from that. If you have both, then you're going to get a +2 bonus to AC. That's not going to put your AC into the stratosphere, but it is a nice little bonus. I will mention with 2-weapon fighting, I think as an actual type of combat, not just this combat style, but as a type of combat, as a choice for your character, I think is weaker in the player's handbook. When I get into feats and we talk about dual wielder, I'm going to have a bit of a fix for that. So 2-weapon fighting is something that will become viable once we get into our feat section. And then finally, fighter actually technically doesn't have a capstone. Instead, it is simply their extra attack scales again at level 20, but there's nothing unique they get at level 20. So I wanted to add something in addition to that. So they get Weapon Master. Beginning at 20th level, whenever you hit a creature with an attack as part of the attack action, any additional attacks you make against that creature on your turn are made with advantage. So we've boosted them at level 20, as I have with every class up to now, and I will probably continue to do that. I think capstone should be really good. Going from 3 attacks to 4 attacks, of course, is good, but you went from 2 attacks to 3 attacks, and that was really good too. And when you went from 1 attack to 2 attacks, that was really good as well. In fact, that was probably even better than going from 3 attacks to 4 attacks. So I just thought at level 20, there should be something that's uniquely good that you get at level 20. So that brings us into our martial archetypes, our subclasses, and the first one we're going to talk about is the Battle Master. So the Battle Master's main thing is combat superiority. You get maneuvers and superiority dice. I haven't changed these, so you're still going to get the same number of maneuvers, you're still going to get the same number of superiority dice, and they are the same die types. Student of War is just kind of an add-on. At 3rd level, you gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice. I didn't see the point in changing that. The main reason you're taking Battle Master is for the maneuvers, not for Student of War. So let's get into the maneuvers because I have changed a few of these. So the first one is Commander Strike. I've kept it the same. Use your bonus action when you make an attack, and you can have an ally attack using their reaction. This tends to work well already with certain combinations. It's a way to have the party rogue, for example, be able to make a second sneak attack on the round. So Commander Strike is already a reasonably good ability if you use it correctly, so I didn't boost it at all. Disarming attack, I've just boosted this one just a little bit. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to disarm the target, forcing it to drop one item of your choice that it's holding. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and the target must make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, it drops the object you choose. Now this is the same. The difference is the object lands in the space of your choice within 10 feet of the enemy. So now you can kind of knock the weapon away, and that way it might be easier for somebody else to snatch it up, for example. It's not a big boost. I just gave it a little bit of a boost. I felt it kind of needed one. Disarming attack is a little circumstantial. Not everyone you fight has weapons. Often monsters don't use weapons. So when you are fighting something with a weapon, I just wanted to give it just a little bit more. Distracting Strike, I kept the same. Perfectly good ability. You hit a creature with an attack, you use a superiority die, add the damage, and then the next attack against that creature by somebody else has advantage. Again, this works well with things like rogues, giving them their sneak attack and a better chance at a critical hit, for example. Now, Evasive Footwork is one that I very seldom see taken because I do think it is weaker than the other maneuvers. So I felt this one deserved a significant boost. What Evasive Footwork normally does is when you move, you can expend a superiority die, and then you roll the die and you add it to your AC until you stop moving. So I guess the idea of that is if you provoke opportunity attacks during your turn, they would be a little bit harder to hit. That's not a great use of a superiority die, in my opinion. So what I've done is I've boosted Evasive Footwork to be more defensive. When you move, you can expand 1 superiority die, rolling the die and adding the number rolled to your AC until the beginning of your next turn. So now it's actually going to boost your defense after your turn is over. Feinting Attack is another one I thought needed a bit of a boost. Normally you use your bonus action and a superiority die to get advantage on a single attack. That seems like a high cost to me. So instead, what I've done is you can expend 1 superiority die on your turn to feint, choose 1 creature within 5 feet of you as the target. You have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature on this turn. If that attack hits, add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. So basically I've removed the requirement to expend your bonus action. Goading Attack is an okay maneuver, but the problem with it is it's probably just worse than Menacing Attack, because Goading Attack would give disadvantage on an enemy to attack anyone but you. Menacing Attack would give them disadvantage to attack any enemy, including you. So Goading Attack just ended up being just a little bit worse, which is too bad, because I like the idea of the ability. The idea that you're kind of provoking a creature to attack you instead of your allies. So I've boosted that one. So what I've done with it is, now with Goading Attack, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to goad the target into attacking you. You add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and the target has disadvantage on all attack rolls against targets other than you until the end of your next turn. So there's 2 changes. The first change is I've removed the saving throw, so now Goading Attack is going to work automatically. But the other thing I've done is I've restricted it to melee weapons, because Goading Attack, if it didn't provide a saving throw and you could do it with ranged weapons, then it becomes too good, because often you can hit a creature with a ranged weapon and then it can't attack you or can't get to you. So then Goading Attack would be just better than Menacing Attack. So I had to put that limitation in. So now Goading Attack is melee only, but no saving throw. So I think it gives it something unique and a reason to take it other than Menacing Attack, but without making it just strictly better than Menacing Attack. Lunging Attack is one I thought definitely needed a boost. With the Player's Handbook, you make a melee weapon attack on your turn. You expend a superiority die to increase your reach for that attack by 5 feet. And then you add the superiority die to the damage. So what I've done is now when you make a melee weapon attack on your turn, you can expend 1 superiority die to increase your reach until the beginning of your next turn. on your first hit with that weapon before the beginning of your next turn, you add your superiority die to the damage roll. So now what you're doing is you are increasing your reach for an entire round. So I felt that was a lot more effective than doing it for one attack. Maneuvering attack is one where you use your superiority die and then an ally can move into a more advantageous position using its reaction. It was already a reasonably good ability, and I didn't see the reason to change that one. Menacing attack, I already talked about. Good ability. You expend a superiority die, and you might be able to frighten the target. Frightened targets, of course, have issues with maneuverability, and they get disadvantage on their attacks. So it's really quite good. So it didn't need a boost at all. Parry is a decent ability. If you get attacked with melee attack, use your reaction and expend a superiority die to reduce the damage. It tends to work better with a dexterity build than with a strength build, but it's a good maneuver and I didn't see the reason to change that one either. Precision attack also I didn't change. So when you make an attack roll against a creature, you can expend a superiority die to potentially turn a miss into a hit. Pushing attack was fine. You add your superiority die to a hit, and then there's a strength saving throw, or you push the target up to 15 feet. That can be very effective tactically. So I didn't change that one. Rally, I also didn't change. You expend one superiority die to bolster the resolve of your companions. When you do so, choose a friendly creature who can see or hear you. That creature gains temporary hit points equal to your superiority die roll plus your charisma modifier. Riposte is already a player favorite. When a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction and expend one superiority die to make a melee attack against the creature. And if you hit, you add a superiority die to the damage, so that's the same. Sweeping attack. Now, sweeping attack was pretty crappy. When you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you expend a superiority die to attempt to damage another creature with the same attack. Choose another creature within 5 feet of the original target and in your reach. If the original attack roll would hit the second creature, it takes damage equal to the number you rolled on your superiority die. The damage is of the same type dealt with the original attack. So basically, with most of these maneuvers, you're already adding your superiority die to damage. In this case, you're doing your superiority die and damage to another creature. And that's really all you get for it. So I didn't really like sweeping attack, and I thought it needed a boost. So what I've done now is on your turn, when you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with the melee weapon, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to damage another creature with the same attack. Choose another creature within 5 feet of the original target and within your reach. If the attack hits, add your superiority die to the damage roll. So you drop somebody to 0 hit points. There's another creature within 5 feet of the original target that's within your reach. So now you spend a superiority die and you get an attack against them. And you add your superiority die to the damage. And trip attack. Now, trip attack isn't bad. Prone is okay. And once you knock a creature prone, of course, attacks against it have advantage. That's useful. It depends a little bit on the initiative order and things like that. I don't know if that trip attack quite measured up to some of the other maneuvers, so I gave this one just a tiny boost. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to attempt to knock the target down. You can add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and if the target is larger or smaller, it must make a strength saving throw. On a failed saving throw, you knock the target prone. That's the same as the Player's Handbook. And then I've just added, and its movement speed is reduced by 10 feet until the end of its next turn. So trip attack now really slows down your enemy. Now at 7th level, Battlemaster gets Know Your Enemy, and I've had some people mention to me that they really don't like this ability. They'd like to see it boosted. But I know other people. I know people personally who absolutely love this ability. So I think it really depends on your table. And in the end, I decided I'm just going to leave Know Your Enemy the same. So starting at 7th level, you can spend a minute observing or interacting with a creature outside of combat, and then you can learn some basic things about them. And I haven't changed this at all. So at 10th levels, your superiority dice improve to D10s. At 18th level, they turn into D12, same as Player's Handbook. And finally, our capstone, Relentless. I've given this one a boost. My main problem with Relentless is it tended to punish Battlemasters that didn't blow everything they had right away. Because what it would do is if you rolled initiative and you had no superiority dice remaining, you would get one superiority die. But for that Battlemaster that's tactical and is using their superiority dice carefully and not expending them all, then they would roll initiative and they'd get nothing. So I've just reworded it a little bit so that the players who are playing more tactically get rewarded as well. Starting at 15th level, when you roll initiative and you do not have your maximum amount of superiority dice remaining, regain 1 superiority die. Now with the champion, as I mentioned, I didn't actually make any changes to the champion except for with the additional fighting style. What I have done is at 10th level, you're going to choose a second option from the fighting style class feature. When you reach 14th level, you may select an additional fighting style to improve. Because what I wanted to do with improved fighting style is I didn't want to necessarily reward anyone who maybe dips a little bit of ranger and a little bit of paladin to get multiple fighting styles and then they all improve at 14th level. That would be a little crazy. But the champion gets an additional fighting style at 10th level, and I didn't want to punish them when the fighter gets their bonuses to fighting style. So the champion is now going to improve both their fighting styles when they get to 14th level. And that brings us to Eldritch Knight. And Eldritch Knight, again, I've made very few changes. Eldritch Knight, I think, is reasonably well made. I like the cantrips. I like the spell slots. Spells known, including the limitations on non-abjuration and evocation spells. I've kept all that. Weapon Bond is going to remain the same. War Magic's going to remain the same. Eldritch Strike is a neat one, and it's going to remain the same. Arcane Charge is going to remain the same. The only one I've improved is improved War Magic. They're essential capstone. Starting at 18th level, when you use an action to cast a spell, you can make 1 additional weapon attack as part of that action. Normally that would require a bonus action with improved War Magic, but I've made it just part of the action. So you cast a spell, you make a weapon attack, and then you still have your bonus action to do something else if you like. So that's the fighter. It doesn't have nearly as many changes as you've seen in other variants up to now, and that's because, honestly, the fighter doesn't have the problems that we've seen in other variants up to now. The fighter already fits the theme that it should fit. It is a fighter. It uses weapons and armor, and it battles the enemy. And I think the subclasses are okay for it as well. As I mentioned, there were a couple maneuvers I didn't think quite measured up to the other ones, so I've given those a bit of a boost. But mainly what I've done is fighters now starting around 8th level are going to be boosted a little bit. Not in a bunch of overly strange ways. These are things that are just really kind of just fighter based. They're going to be better at dodging. They're going to be better at doing opportunity attacks. They're going to be better at their combat style. And finally, they're going to have a better capstone. So that is the fighter. The Treant Monk variant, I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, if you want to see the document, the link is in the comment section down below or the video description down below. And then there will be a link back to this video from that document. Next week, we're going to go a little bit different. There's been a new development within the last week. Unearthed Arcana has now released a bunch of class variants, which, of course, is timely because I'm working on class variants in this series right now. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to go over those Unearthed Arcana class variants, and I'm going to give you my take on them. And then the week following that, then we're going to get back into my variants, and we're going to talk about the Druid. So next week, we're going to talk Unearthed Arcana, then back to the Treant Monk variant on the following week. And until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you next time.